It seemed like really slow motion. I was conscious of my bike falling out from under me. And then like I'm going head first. And again, I don't know why my arms don't go out. It was just like, I'm just going to impale myself, head first here. And that's what I did. I just went right into the bank.
Thanks to better and more mountain bike trails, improved technology in mountain bikes, and a recent virus forcing everyone in the world outside, there are more people riding mountain bikes these days than ever before. For good reason, because it is so much fun. And so it's probably not that surprising that over the last few years, Teton County Search and Rescue has seen a significant increase in callouts for injured mountain bikers. Thanks for joining us for another episode of The Fine Line. I'm Matt Hansen. In this episode, we will revisit the Phillips Canyon mountain bike trail, which descends a prominent drainage north of Teton Pass. This episode also revolves around the same log bridge feature that was discussed back on episode number 32, titled Night Rescue in Phillips Canyon. The log bridges in Phillips are basically big logs that have been cut in half and then laid down across a creek crossing. Pedaling across one on a bike is either really exciting or, if you're like me, really terrifying. It seems easy enough to just go straight, but, it's a big drop off either side. This episode also explores a common theme on the Fine Line, which is how people call for help when they have little to no cell service. In this case, the BackcountrySOS app was utilized to notify the first responder community here in Jackson. BackcountrySOS is a free app that operates as a text to 911 feature for your smartphone, and it will work when you don't have enough service to make a voice call. Like this podcast, it was developed by Teton County Search and Rescue Foundation, and the app is now monitored in 12 counties across the Intermountain West. You can find BackcountrySOS at your app store or learn more at backcountryzero.com. The upcoming interview was recorded in the studios of KHOL 89.1 FM in Jackson. For more stories about the doing and doers of Jackson Hole, subscribe to Jackson Unpacked, a weekly news podcast produced by our friends at KHOL. After this quick break, join us for a bumpy ride down Phillips Canyon.
Hey everyone, I'm Sandy Flint, Senior Materials Manager at Stio, the presenting sponsor of the Fine Line podcast. When I go to work each day at Stio's home base in Jackson, Wyoming, I'm responsible for sourcing all the material components that make up Stio's product. This includes fabrics, buttons, zippers, and snaps, all dyed up in the fun colors that make Stio, Stio. Like planning your next great backcountry adventure, product creation fosters a team of forward-thinking, creative problem solvers. From our most technical fabrics to the tiny little pine cones on our snaps and buttons, no detail is too small for our team to obsess over. One of Stio's core values is that we are all stewards of the mountain life. We're achieving this with the adoption of new recycled and low carbon intensity materials, and by building long-lasting, high-quality clothes that are ready for both your epic and everyday adventures. To read our latest stewardship report and to learn more about Stio's sustainability journey, visit us at stio.com.
So on August 8th, I was by myself. The friends weren't around. A friend of mine actually had left town, and I think she said when she left, don't get hurt while I'm away. I'm Rick Gordon. I live in Jackson. I work part-time, various things. I work with Wyoming Stargazing, and I'm the Teton Backcountry Ambassador Coordinator and Shuttle Driver, and I also work with the team's program, Silicon Couloir. And I'm 64 years old, and my son lives in Bozeman, and my daughter lives in Burlington. I lived in Driggs in the 90s and then moved back here a couple of years ago, but I've been coming out here for 40 years, probably skiing the backcountry almost every single year. I spend a lot of days out in the snow, 150 days probably in the backcountry in the wintertime. So in the summertime, I spend a lot of time outdoors, either mountain biking, regular biking, hiking, running, up in the park, in the Grovon area too. So I was trying to figure out where to mountain bike, and I was had a couple hours, and I said, I've been to Phillips Canyon once, and I only ridden up from the bottom one time. And it was kind of a crappy weather day. It was cloudy and foggy out and a little misty. And so I was like, yes, I'll just ride up this ridge trail, and then, I can always come down the same way or go out arrow if I have to. And so I headed out there and parked down along the road.
There are a couple ways to get to Phillips Canyon. which on Trail Forks is rated as a black diamond. A common way is via the Arrow Trail from the parking area on the Phillips bench. That one requires a shuttle or a big loop on your bike. The other way is from a small trailhead on Fish Creek Road, just outside of Wilson. That's where Rick parked and hopped on his bike.
And biked up, and just remember, it was like really greasy out. Like the top of the trail was wet and kind of a little slippery, but I'm just going uphill. And then actually on the way up, I fell twice on my bike on like uphill flat terrain, like kind of stupid, feeling like, what an idiot. You fall on flat ground. And the second time I rolled off the trail into brush and stuff. And I kind of thought to myself, like, I didn't get hurt, but like you could get hurt. What difference is there between just rolling into trees or rolling into trees and breaking something? And so I was pretty conscious of like being alone and not wanting to get hurt, and that there was no one out at all. I saw no people. And so I got to the top and tried to decide like where to go. And I'm like, coming back down that greasy stuff, actually, I'm probably going to slide out somewhere, and that's probably more dangerous than going down Phillips Canyon. And I knew I'd only gone to Phillips Canyon once, and I knew, like, whoever said, it's kind of technical, so be careful. So I'm like, I'll just avoid all the hard things. I avoided the first log bridge. I didn't walk over it. I walked around it. And then all the drops on the trail, I walked around, too, and I can bike them, and I've biked them before, but I'm like, I just don't want to get hurt. Somehow, and I can't remember how this happened, I find myself out on this log bridge, like 3 feet out there, and was really conscious in my head saying, I hate log bridges. And I look over to the side where I don't want to fall, which makes your bike go exactly there. And then rode right off the bridge. And again, it seemed like really slow motion. I was conscious of my bike falling out from under me. And then like I'm going head first. And again, I don't know why my arms don't go out. It's just like, I'm just going to impale myself, head first here. And that's what I did. I just went right into the bank.
About 8 months before his bike crash, Rick had broken his neck while Nordic skiing. He was able to ski out, but when he checked himself into the clinic, he discovered the injury. He says it was relatively minor and that he was fine after wearing a neck brace for a few weeks. But it helped him learn a few things about himself.
So like I was used to like the wind getting knocked out of me from that. And so I'm lying there with, my wind knocked out of me, and I'm just like, I'm okay, and I immediately checked my feeling, my legs worked fine, and one arm was okay, and my other arm was tingly, but like I figured that's gonna, at least I have feelings there. And didn't really think about being paralyzed, but I just like checked my extremities, and I'm lying there and thinking, okay, just like catch your breath, take 5 minutes, I'm in no hurry to go anywhere, and then I'll bike out really slowly. And lie there, and then I was like, oh, like I can't really bike. And then I was like, okay, I'll leave my bike here. No, we'll figure out how to get it some other day, and I'll just walk out really slow. And I then like realized I couldn't even push myself up high enough to like sit up, let alone walk out. And so then I was just like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm kind of stuck here. And I was like, okay, how do I get out? And I remembered I had the BackcountrySOS app on my phone. And I also remembered I was really conscious when I left my car that I left my reading glasses in the car, thinking, one never needs reading glasses mountain biking. What would you need them for? And so I have my phone in my fanny pack, and I take it out and realize I can't even see the apps on my phone, or can't distinguish them without my glasses on. So I'm trying to guess what color the app is, which I did kind of remember. And so I clicked on the app, and I don't know how it's supposed to work. And it goes to another screen. And again, I can't see what it says, but something was red on it. So I figured press the red thing. And I press the red thing, and it goes to another screen with another red thing. And I think, is this a joke? Like a circular, oh, good app here. And then it switches, and people should know this, that it eventually switches to text messaging. It goes right to your text part of your phone. And I could read enough where it said message failure to send.
To help clarify, when you activate BackcountrySOS, it goes through a few prompts and asks you about the nature of your emergency before sending the signal to local dispatch. Dispatchers are then able to get your location and phone number, which allows them to send a text message back to your phone.
and my phone doesn't have great service anyways. And so I'm like, oh, that's too bad. And for whatever reason, this whole thing, I wasn't panicky, afraid. Maybe I'm delusional, but I didn't like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But so what I thought was like, what if I hold it as high as I can hold it up here? And tried sending the message again, and I had to have my hand like straight up, and a message goes through, and then I could read the message saying, this is the sheriff's department.
Yeah, I was at the pool with the kids when the call came in, and I remember the weather because it was like into the pool, out of the pool, into the pool, out of the pool. My name is Tobin Dennis. I was actually born and raised in Jackson. I left for college and medical school and a few other endeavors. And now I'm back here working in the emergency department. I have a wife and 2 kids, and that's mostly where I spend my time right now, is playing with my kids. I'm part of the newest class of search and rescue. I joined in 2021. It's been about 3 years now. I had actually just gotten the kids into the car to go home when I got the call. I looked down, I was like, well, that's not one I'm going to make because I'm by myself with my kids, and there's no way I'm going to get to the hangar and be able to take care of this. But then as I was kind of pulled up the map to see where it was, I saw it was in Phillips Canyon, which is right next to my house. And so I called my wife as I was driving home and saw where she was and said, if I can put the kids to bed, do you think you can get here in time for me to pop out the door and go to this rescue? And she luckily had just finished teaching a class and was on her way home too. And so I was able to put both kids to bed. And then she was like 5 to 10 minutes away and felt like that was a reasonable time to let them sleep. And I didn't have any of my gear at the time because all my stuff is at the hangar. So I went down and grabbed one of my hiking backpacks. And since it had been raining, I was a little worried that you might be cold. So I put about 4 extra layers in there. And that was about all I had other than some water and 4 extra layers, and got back in my car, drove over there, and started running up the trail.
I learned later, I could see the message when I got home, and they not only had my exact coordinates, they had my elevation, they had my name, which I think came from registering for the app maybe.
The app does not require a login or password, but it does have the option to register with certain information, like your name, birth date, medications, or allergies you'd like to pass on to rescue personnel.
And then he said to me, one of the messages was, try not to use your phone. You only have 21% battery, and we may need to contact you. So they even had that information. And so, there was that much communication. And then the last message he said, I could read, and he said, one of 2. The first message said, search and rescue's on their way. I think he might have said you'd be there like within an hour. And the second message he said was, if anything changes, text me. I'll keep this line open. And I was like, okay, great. And then about 20 minutes later, it starts raining. And so I tried to text saying, it's starting to rain and we're getting a little cold. Is there any way to get here faster? That'd be great. And I get a message back saying, line closed by Sheriff's Department. But anyways, then I was just like, okay, I'm here. And so in the waiting time, I think I was like super calm. I was just like, I'm not a meditator, but I was like, I just feel like Zen. I'm just lying here. I can't do anything about making things happen faster. And I'm just going to be really calm. And it seemed to go by super fast. It turns out, I guess it was like almost an hour. And, whatever, it just felt like it is what it is. And I wasn't foreseeing, I didn't have a big sense of health woes that I would learn about later.
We're going to take a quick break. You're listening to The Fine Line from Backcountry Zero.
This episode of The Fine Line is sponsored by Arc'teryx. Based in the Coast Mountains of British Columbia, Arc'teryx specializes in technical, high-performance apparel, outerwear, and equipment solutions to meet the needs of the mountain athlete and Teton County Search and Rescue volunteers. When you see TCSAR members out there wearing yellow jackets during a rescue mission, you know they are wearing the Alpine Guide jacket from Arc'teryx. Learn more at Arc'teryx.com.
I was texting with Anthony Stevens, and I knew that he was coming with some more resources, but that the full team was going to be a bit behind. And really the idea was I was going to get up there and just figure out what was going on. Because probably from part of the fact that you didn't have great cell reception and we were only getting limited texts, we didn't know the full extent of what you were dealing with at that time, and whether this was something that we were going to be able to walk you out, which happened some of these, or we were going to need the full team to resources to haul you out, versus maybe get something like a helicopter, depending on what we see. So yeah, I put on my running shoes because I know that trail pretty well, and I run up there a fair amount, and I knew pretty much exactly where you were, and just put on my backpack and started running up there. And as soon as I got to you, I did a quick assessment and was pretty concerned about your injuries. And I don't know if you know, but I walked away for a little bit at the beginning to get cell reception. And then I was able to text the team that we were going to need a full resources to get you out because you weren't going to be able to do anything for yourself. You actually caught me a little bit by surprise. I think you yelled and I didn't see you, and I was a little short of breath because I had been jogging for the however many miles up there you were, which wasn't too far. But yeah, you kind of caught me off guard. I try and say my name, and I'm with Search and Rescue. And as a doctor, I have my walk-in speech, and I was pretty similar to that.
What is that walk-in speech?
It's like, hey, I'm Dr. Dennis. Nice to meet you. Who'd you bring with you? It's essentially the same as that I start each time. Yeah, I guess the first thing I do is just kind of size up the scene and just see what I'm dealing with. The way that people hold their bodies when they're laying on the ground, I feel like tells me a lot about what sort of injuries they might have. You were not moving, which makes me really concerned when you're just really stiff and not moving there. And then it's kind of just going to your basics of first getting your vital signs, make sure all those seem okay, which yours seemed fine. And then I was trying to do a secondary survey, which is when I started pushing on your back. And that's when I was pretty concerned that you had something going on there. So I guess first and primarily it's, are they stable? Do I need to do something right this moment? Or do I have time to figure out what resources we can get there and figure out a good plan? And you were definitely in that stable camp that we needed to mobilize resources, but I didn't need to do anything immediately. Yeah, so as a doctor on the team, I think it's kind of an interesting perspective. The team's actually pretty impressive of our medical abilities. People defer a lot when there's a doctor there because they're a little concerned about doing what they do, but our team's really good at doing the medical side of what we do. I think that I bring a slightly unique perspective just because I know what I'm doing, and I've seen probably 50 broken spines from biking in my 4 years here. That's an exaggeration. I haven't seen that many. But I've seen a lot of different injuries that we see out in search and rescue, and so I've just seen more numbers. So I'm pretty comfortable with most of the things that we see. Our team's great, and we have a really solid medical team.
Tobin came by, I remember, he introduced himself, and I was like, great, and for whatever reason, I thought you were really competent.
Hopefully.
your voice was confidence inducing. And again, I know, I knew what you were going to figure you were going to do, you check my vitals and stuff. And then again, my favorite line of the whole thing, I don't know if you said it right away, you checked out my back and stuff. And then you're like, yeah, maybe it's just a bruise. And I was thinking, yeah, that seems like what I think it is. And I was kind of stuck with that the whole time. I was like, yeah, maybe I'll bike tomorrow. That'd be great. It's a bruise. I can bike with a bruise, or I can hike, and so then I was just, you checked me out, and then I was lying there, and you eventually went back and sat on the log bridge, and then that's where I was like, oh, come on, just talk to me about anything. And I guess you didn't want me to look up at you. And then I don't know how much later Anthony came, but I remember when he came up, and then you guys seemed to have a lovely conversation that I was listening in on.
Good. Yeah. I was definitely more worried than just a bruise when I showed up, because I would have probably tried to help you get up if I was thinking that. But yeah, I was definitely worried about your spine after pushing on it. It was crackling when I pushed on your spine, which was never a good sign.
Yeah.
I was a little worried about your lungs because of the way you were describing the pain in your chest. But yeah, I feel like when I get there, I try and keep your spirits up. And yeah, I tried talking to you a little bit, but like you said, you were moving a fair amount, and I was really trying to keep you still. And despite me asking you to stay still whenever I talked to you, you kept looking up at me, which was I was concerned.
Yeah.
So I probably talked less than I could have.
And in retrospect, I'm glad you didn't tell me any medical stuff, that if you had said like, oh, your back is kind of crackling, or, you look like you're in a really bad place, it was probably better that you didn't tell me anything. I don't know if you ever tell anybody any details like that.
I guess it depends how much they ask and how much and where they seem like in headspace. Some people seem like they need a lot of answers right away, and you seem pretty okay just laying on the ground and waiting for the team to come. So I kind of went with that at the time.
And I think by the time you got there, I think the sun had come back out. So I think I was kind of happy, I was like, oh, I'm in the sun here. It's warm and it's not raining on me. And that was good enough for then.
Yeah, about 5 minutes before I got to you, it stopped raining and the sun had come out, and it started to be a lot nicer day. Yeah, so Anthony Stephen arrives. He's similar in the amount of gear that he has, a little bit more with a basic first aid, but nothing that's going to help us for the situation that we're in. He was able to tell me where the rest of the team was. My cell service is not particularly good, and his cell service is significantly better where we were. He had full service and was able to watch the team come in on the map. So we were able to see the second teams and the people that had the wheeled litter coming in. So we were kind of just discussing best ways to get out. I told him that I was pretty concerned about your back and that we were going to have to be real careful with moving you, and that I wanted to do we were not going to do anything until we had everything there and everyone in hands, and make as minimal amounts of movements as we could and get you onto that suck bag that we have that keeps you from moving before we get you out. And it was really just again, more waiting. It was I got there and we waited, and then he got there and then we waited, and then finally the full team showed up, and we were able to use the hands and get you onto the wheeled litter.
Yeah, and I thought you guys did a really good job. It was really constant, like, how are you going to move me now? And that it was so painless and smooth and supported. I don't, again, I don't know if I was on drugs by then and didn't know it.
You were on drugs by then, which helps. But yeah, we work on that, and we have people that know how to do that, and we practice the lifts, and it's also I was very specific that we needed to be very careful with you when everyone showed up, that this was going to be one that's not one that we're taking it easy on. We're going to make sure that we keep you steady and move you as little as possible. So I think all of those things together kind of add in together to hopefully make an experience like it sounds like it was. Suck bag is one of these tools that we use for search and rescue. That is a bag that's filled with a bunch of, I think they're like a bead-like material, and it's flexible, and you can roll it and put it in whatever position you want and stick it in a backpack. And then what we can do is we lay it next to the patient. And for this one, we were very careful. So what happens is I get cervical spine. So I'm at your head, and I'm stabilizing your cervical spine. And then we have at least 2 people on each side, sometimes more, depending on how far and what we have to move. And I think for yours, we actually just lifted you up, put the suck bag down, and then put you back down onto it. And so we had a person who was managing the suck bag, and then me at the head, I'm in charge of everything. So we lift on my command, and then we go down, but we work as a team to go up and down so that you're very stable for it. And once we get you down onto that suck bag, we can move it to the position that we feels the best position for you. And then we have a little pump that's able to take all the air out of it, and it gets pretty rigid so that you're not moving it anymore. And it's very stabilizing for the spine and the cervical spine. It's much better than what we used to use with backboards and things like that. So the wheeled litter is really handy on trails. It's got one big wheel, and then it's essentially just a cage that we can put that suck bag into, strap you into it, and we have 4 handles that we can adjust the height and location depending on the angle of the slope that we're on, and we're able to control the speed pretty easily. We have there's braking, but it's a lot of it's more manpower. And it can be pretty heavy. And for a lot of those big bumps and things that we're going over, we talk about it and we'll lift you up over the big rocks. So it can be a fair amount of work for us. But we have a team we had 10 or 12 people out there, so we were able to just switch out and take turns and make pretty good time, I think. We get down to the road, and it's kind of a fun turn for me because it's usually EMS who gives me the patients in the ER, and I get to give them a patient. And so I had to get a give report to them instead of the other way around. They can give me a hard time, which is always fun. And then we throw you in there, and you went to the emergency department.
Yeah, going down the trail was pleasant. I just like, they're doing a really good job. And for some reason, when the ambulance was there, that was like really emotional for me. I don't like they're here to save me, or I'll be okay, or whatever it was. It still is. I don't know why. It's just like, because you guys did a really good job. But I'm like, oh, the ambulance people are, and that they were there like at the time. I think that was it. Like someone's here for me. Like I don't have to wait around for it. And the caring community was really important. And it was very nice. I think the woman was like, my car was there, and she's like, do you want this in your car, or where do you want? Do you want me to take your glass or whatever it was? She had this conversation. Like, oh, that's really thoughtful. Not to just bundle me in here and take me away.
After Rick was transported to St. John's Hospital in Jackson, the team took an MRI and then, due to his extensive injuries, decided to fly him to Eastern Idaho Regional Medical Center in Idaho Falls.
So I had a burst T3 and T4 vertebrae in my back, and then supposedly I had 8 broken ribs and a broken sternum, which none of them, those thankfully didn't hurt me, or I didn't feel them while my back was doing what my back was doing. So I think that was all the real injuries I had.
Were you surprised when you received that diagnosis?
I guess I was surprised. I mean, I wouldn't have diagnosed it myself, but, at that point it's just, I think at that point you're just like living, the next thing is, you don't have control over, so you just accept what's coming next. And it's, again, for whatever reason, I don't get fearful about those things. I'm more like, okay, it'll work out. It'll get fixed. And again, it wasn't until months later I really knew the potential danger of it. I just like, okay, it's a broken back, and they said we're going to do surgery tomorrow, and I'm like, okay, and that will fix it. In my mind, I didn't like go through other more dangerous outcomes that might have occurred.
It just seemed like you were so calm after you crashed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for better or worse, my emotional side, I'm very good in crisis situations.
And then you said you learned a couple months later. What did you learn, and what was the seriousness that you came to learn?
So almost 5 months later, I was Nordic skiing in West Yellowstone and ended up talking to a doctor and told him about my injury, and he asked what happened, and I told him I had 2 burst vertebrae, and he's cringed, and I was like, yeah, so no one ever told me the details. And he said, burst vertebrae are like, your vertebrae are like almost not there. And he said your spinal cord was exposed, and almost anything probably would have paralyzed you at that point. It was a wake-up call.
That seems to come back to the response that Tobin, you and the team did by making sure that he wasn't being moved and taking really great care of him in the field when you didn't really have that much equipment.
Yeah, I mean, in the field, we just have to go with our exam and what we're worried about. And that was definitely something that I'd be worried about would be an unstable spinal fracture, which is what it turned out that you had with the burst fracture. And so, yeah, we always try to treat to the level of the worst case when we're in the field and we don't know everything.
How has your recovery been, Rick?
I guess my recovery's been great because I can do things. And, the search and rescue people I see around town are pleased to see someone they treated and able to be around and walking. And, I'll be out backcountry skiing soon, and I've been Nordic skiing a lot. And the interesting thing to me, it was, first of all, I didn't know how long recovery would take. Again, my broken neck thing was really short and uneventful. And then I heard I've never had surgery in my life, so I didn't realize how long it takes to recover from surgery, that it's like more than a year to be fully recovered. I thought it'd be like 6 weeks, I'll be back out. And apparently the surgery, and you probably maybe can talk more about what, but they retract your back muscles to get to the spine, and they ended up putting in my T1 to T6, fusing it with 5mm screws, like the size of bike screws, and I think titanium rods. And so the what I think, to me, I think was the real difficult recovery was the muscles get all, basically traumatized, I think, when they retract them. And for 60 years, they've been happy where they were. And then you move them and they're not happy. And then it's been, it's like muscle by muscle coming back. Again, I didn't know that was the process. And I thought like the whole thing will kind of heal together. And actually the PT, again, all credit to the PT people, the amazing, ability to gain strength and mobility that I've never really been a gym rat or anything. And so I'm probably stronger upper body and more flexible than I've ever been in my life. So, and this part of my back's not going to go anywhere, I think, no matter how old I get. So maybe in the long run, it may be good. For the first time in my life, I've questioned doing a sport because of a safety issue. And again, for better or worse, I've never really, it's where I've always felt really comfortable, was in the outdoors, and my physicality has always been like a go-to centering thing to be outside and be really comfortable, particularly on skis, just like you feel like you're in the zone. And now I'm like, well, things can go wrong. And so I'm not sure about my mountain biking, like if I'll mountain bike at all. I think I will, but I'm not going to, I never did anything that hard, but I'm going to really avoid anything technical. And but on the other thing is, and partly a tribute to search and rescue, but I've been involved, I think, an active community member always where I lived, but really giving back to community, I think, is so important, even more now, because what they give in terms of their time and their families and energy is really just astounding. And so, I've really tried to be involved in the community here more, to give back in ways I can.
I think it's just kind of goes, it's a place that you've spiked before, and it's something that you probably could have done, and just knowing that things can happen fast and it's good to be prepared. And if it's just as much as like having an extra jacket and some food and the ability to try and letting people know where you're going, all those things are real important, because like you see, it happens really quickly, and it's almost always on things that you don't expect it to happen on.
Yeah, and certainly the other thing, I mean, again, I don't know about my outdoor experience, but like being really appreciative of health and life, and, really remembering, how quickly that can be taken away.
Thank you for listening to another episode of The Fine Line. That was Rick Gordon, along with Teton County Search and Rescue volunteer, Dr. Tobin Dennis. If you would like to support Teton County Search and Rescue volunteers, you can make an online donation today at tetoncountysar.org/donate. Our editing and sound are by Melinda Binks. The theme song is by Anne and Pete Sibley, with additional music produced by Ben Winship. The original cover art is by Jen Reddy, and my name is Matt Hansen. This podcast is produced by Backcountry Zero, a vision of the Teton County Search and Rescue Foundation to eliminate fatalities and serious injuries in the Jackson Hole backcountry. Registration is now open for numerous classes and workshops offered by Backcountry Zero to help you have big adventures this summer and do them safely. Learn more at backcountryzero.com.